If she hadn't dropped her water bottle, they might not have found a single trace of her. At exactly 7:12 a.m. on a humid July morning, 15-year-old Emma Walker vanished while jogging the perimeter of Willow Creek's State Park. Her father found the water bottle first, half buried in pine needles, still cold to the touch. Her phone, still counting steps in her running app, resting perfectly upright beside the trail as if she'd placed it there. No sign of struggle, no scream, no blood. Just one faint set of footprints that ended abruptly 30 yards from the oak grove. The last place anyone saw her was near Whispering Woods, a patch of tangled wilderness the locals avoided after dark. Not because of crime, because of stories. They called it the place where the women in white hummed lullabies to the lost. Sheriff Evelyn Grant didn't believe in ghost stories, not after 30 years on the job. But what she did believe in was Max, a retired German Shepherd K9 who never once failed to find what others missed. She hadn't planned on bringing him. He was 10 now, with more gray than tan around his muzzle and a lazy limp from an old injury during a drug bust back in 18. But as she grabbed her badge and keys, Max padded over to the cruiser on his own, tail low, eyes steady. Something about the case unsettled him, and Evelyn had learned long ago, when Max paid attention, so should she. They reached the trailhead just after 9 a.m. The volunteer search teams had already arrived. Deputies, firefighters, a dozen townsfolk in flannel and hiking boots, all combing through brush and dead leaves like they expected to find her hiding behind a tree. Maybe embarrassed, she got lost. But Evelyn knew better. The look in her father's eyes said this wasn't a runaway. Max sniffed once at the water bottle, then again at the discarded phone. Then his head shot toward the tree line, and he growled, that deep, warning-throated growl Evelyn hadn't heard in over a year. The crowd went quiet. "Let him go," Evelyn said. He took off, not like a young dog chasing rabbits. No, this was methodical. Max followed the trail past the picnic benches and the creek, past the signs warning hikers to stay on marked paths, past even the log barriers the county had installed after last year's wildfire. Then he stopped, right at the edge of the oak grove. That's when the wind died. No birds, no squirrels, not even a buzzing mosquito. Just silence, and the low, almost human hum of the breeze rustling dry leaves that shouldn't have made a sound. A white scarf hung from the lowest branch of the central oak. It fluttered once, then fell, landing at Max's feet. Dry, but it had rained all night. Evelyn picked it up slowly, fingers brushing the fabric. It smelled faintly of lavender. And something else. Something chemical. She turned to the crowd behind her. "Get the search teams away from here. Tell them to focus north, near the river bend. This area's mine." And Max's. For 2 hours they circled the grove. Max pulled her toward a patch of disturbed soil. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than animal activity. Maybe a raccoon. But Evelyn knelt, brushing away the leaves. Underneath, a strange symbol carved into the earth. Circular, with interlocking triangles. Not spray paint, not natural. Fresh. Max pawed the spot once, then whined, a soft, low sound that meant he didn't like what he smelled. "Drugs?" Evelyn whispered, almost to herself. Max didn't answer, but his body told her everything. He didn't like the grove, and neither did she. Something was being staged here, but by who and why? If you're hooked already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Heroes for Animals, where stories like Max's remind us just how much our four-legged heroes truly understand. By the time they returned to the trailhead, the mood had shifted. A second girl, Sophia Reyes, had reportedly gone missing just 2 nights earlier. Different part of town. No connection to Emma, except she, too, was 15. And her birthday? Just 4 days away. Evelyn stared at the file that Sophia's mother handed her, noting the details. Blue dress? Lavender perfume? Went out to see the stars. Never came back. I didn't call the police because I thought—" The woman broke off, voice cracking. "I thought maybe she just stayed with friends." Evelyn nodded, her stomach sinking. Max whined again, nudging the map with his nose. The two red X's, Emma's last known location and Sophia's neighborhood, weren't just randomly spaced. They fell on a crescent line, a pattern, a route, straight to the center of Whispering Woods. That night, Evelyn sat on her front porch with Max resting his head on her lap. The town had gone quiet, but her mind hadn't. She opened the old police files. Disappearances in Willow Creek were rare. But back in the 1960s, there had been a string. Girls, always 15 or 16, always near summer. And each time, someone reported hearing a woman's voice singing in the trees. She flipped through the records until she landed on one name. Helen Ruth Bellamy, 16. Disappeared July 15, 1966. Last seen walking past the very same grove. No body ever found, just a single white slipper. Max suddenly lifted his head and stared toward the edge of the woods. "What is it, boy?" He growled again, then stood up and walked slowly, deliberately toward the back gate. Evelyn followed him into the dark, flashlight in hand. When they reached the woods, Max stopped, pawed at a pile of leaves, and uncovered something. Another white scarf. And beside it, a small voice recorder. Batteries still warm. Evelyn pressed play. A girl's voice, breathy, scared. They said they were ghosts, but I saw one remove her mask. She was just a woman. A real woman. And she said, "Welcome to the Sisters of the Veil. You're home now." Evelyn looked down at Max, heart racing. This wasn't folklore. This was organized. This was planned. The day after finding the recorder in the woods, Evelyn didn't sleep. Not because she couldn't, but because something was forming in her mind. Something too big, too strange, and far too organized to ignore. She sat at her kitchen table until sunrise, spreading out the case files across every inch of the wood, connecting photos, maps, birthdays, and patterns. Max sat by the door, ears alert but calm, like he already knew she was close. She was. A handful of disappearances, some new, some buried deep in the county archives, each with one unshakable detail. The girls had all disappeared just days before their 16th birthdays. Not on it, not after, always before. It was still early when Evelyn knocked on the Reyes' front door. The house was modest but tidy, the kind where the screen door creaks and the smell of strong coffee greets you before anyone even says hello. Sophia's mother, Maria, opened the door with a weary face and tired hands. "I don't mean to intrude," Evelyn said gently, "but I need to see Sophia's room." Maria stepped aside without a word, just nodding. Upstairs, the air still held that faint scent of lavender and sunscreen. The room was perfectly arranged. Bed made, shoes lined up, school books stacked neatly. A girl who planned to come back. Max entered and sniffed once at the doorway, then walked straight to the window. He sat. Evelyn frowned and followed him. The screen had been loosened from the bottom. "Sophia didn't run," she said aloud. Maria, still in the doorway, let out a tiny gasp. "She told me she felt like someone was watching her at night," Maria whispered. "She said there were women outside, singing." Evelyn's blood chilled. "You didn't call us?" Maria hugged her arms. I thought she was imagining it, like a nightmare. She was stressed with school and I didn't want to scare her more." Evelyn nodded slowly, her voice gentle. "Do you have anything that belongs to her?" Maria opened Sophia's nightstand drawer and pulled out a small silver charm bracelet. Max stood up immediately, tail rigid. He wanted it. Evelyn pocketed the bracelet in an evidence bag. "We're going for a ride." The back roads to the north end of Willow Creek hadn't changed in 50 years. Cracked pavement gave way to gravel, then to overgrown paths with ditches full of forgotten things, rusted signs, shattered bottles, old memories. Evelyn remembered the area from her rookie days. No one lived out here now, at least not legally. Max rode shotgun, eyes fixed out the passenger window, nose twitching every few minutes. When they hit a sharp turn near Pine Hollow Ridge, he growled low. Evelyn slowed. "You smell her?" Max barked once, then twice, sharper. She stopped the cruiser, stepped out with the charm bracelet, and watched Max leap out and immediately take off into the thicket. They followed a barely there path for 10 minutes. Mosquitoes buzzed, and the air smelled like moss and something faintly sour. Then Max stopped at a fallen log and began to dig frantically. Evelyn helped clear the leaves. There, nestled in the dirt, was a white satin ballet flat. Same brand, same design, same size as the shoe found in 1966. But this one was Sophia's. She knew because her name was written inside in Sharpie, next to a tiny pink heart. It hadn't been buried for long. Not far from the shoe, they found a hairbrush, with fresh strands caught in the bristles. Blonde and brown mixed. 2 girls. Evelyn radioed dispatch for backup and flagged the GPS coordinates. Something was happening right under their noses, and no one had seen it. 2 hours later, she sat on her office floor. Papers and case files scattered around like puzzle pieces she could finally fit together. Max lay beside her, head on his paws, watching quietly as she traced back every birthday, every missing girl. She'd mapped it, and when she drew a red circle around each location of disappearance, dating back decades, a pattern emerged. Each point connected along the perimeter of Willow Creek, like spokes on a wheel. And at the center, Whispering Woods and the oak tree. Max barked loud and urgent. A call came through the radio. Another girl was missing. This time it was personal. The girl was Maya Patterson, daughter of Evelyn's old dispatcher, Lyle. 16 in 2 days. Disappeared from her bedroom. Window screen sliced clean. Nothing taken. No struggle. Her dog barked for hours before someone finally checked. "She didn't go willingly," Lyle said through tears. "She'd never leave her dog. Never." Evelyn gritted her teeth. "She didn't." Max sniffed Maya's pillow, then barked once and turned. He didn't hesitate. He bolted. Evelyn and 2 deputies followed Max out the back door, through the alley, down behind the gas station, through the drainage ditch, and into a place that shouldn't exist. A hidden trailhead, covered by ivy and plywood, barely noticeable unless a dog's nose led you right to it. Max crouched, growled, then advanced slowly into the tunnel-like trail. The sun disappeared as trees swallowed them whole. They walked for 15 minutes in near silence, except for Max's steady panting and Evelyn's careful footfalls. And then they saw it. A shack. Old, weather-beaten, covered in spray-painted symbols that looked vaguely Celtic. A crude charm hung from the doorframe. Bones, feathers, hair. Deputy Raymond cursed. "Looks like a damn witch hut." Evelyn didn't laugh. She pushed the door open. Inside, a cot, a lantern, bottles of sedatives, a bag of teenage clothes, and carved into the wall, in rough black marker, "The veil sees all, the veil chooses." Max sniffed the cot, then barked loudly. "Is Maya here?" Raymond asked. "No," Evelyn whispered, "but she was." And not long ago, that night, Evelyn stood under the oak again. The scarf was gone now, but Max sniffed the air and turned his head, ears up. He stared into the shadows and let out a low, steady growl. And then she heard it, humming, so faint it could have been imagined. Except Max heard it too, and he began to walk toward it. Evelyn followed. But this time, Max stopped short at the base of the tree and scratched at the roots. She knelt beside him. Under a thick layer of leaves and moss, something metallic glinted. She cleared it away. A trapdoor. The trapdoor groaned open, like something long forgotten, dragging up a smell Evelyn hadn't experienced since her early years in law enforcement. Mold, rust, and secrets. Max stood at the edge of the opening, his hackles raised, but he didn't bark. That was somehow worse. When Max went quiet, it meant he sensed something alive down there. something he hadn't decided whether to trust or bite. Evelyn adjusted the flashlight on her vest, then climbed down the narrow ladder into the earth. The air grew colder with each rung, and quieter. At the bottom, her boots landed on packed dirt, smoother than she expected, almost like it had been walked often. The room wasn't large, but it had clearly been used recently. A cot in the corner, a table lined with bottles of iodine, gauze, and something labeled melatonin blend. A generator hummed faintly nearby. Max dropped down beside her and immediately moved toward a stack of crates in the far corner. He began sniffing frantically, then growled, deep and slow. Evelyn opened one. Inside, speaker equipment, wiring, a high-powered microphone, and a soundboard labeled Tree Frequency Mod 01. She flipped a switch. Humming filled the space. The same sound she'd heard by the oak. She clicked it off, staring at the equipment in stunned silence. Jesus, she muttered. It wasn't the woods whispering. It was someone down here. By noon, her team had arrived. Deputies combed the hidden bunker, collecting everything. Max stayed glued to Evelyn's side, tail down, body rigid, like he didn't want her out of his sight. Detective Lamont from the state police arrived 2 hours later, sunglasses still on inside the bunker. I was expecting some folklore crap, he said, looking around. Not a full-on sound lab. It's both, Evelyn replied. They're weaponizing folklore. He whistled. To what end? She showed him the evidence board from the cabin. Photos of girls, maps, birthdays. Most disturbing was a dry erase marker still fresh beside a phrase written in red. Maya, 2 days. Prepare the circle. Lamont squinted. Who the hell prepares girls like livestock? Someone organized, Evelyn said. Someone local. Max barked sharply. They both turned. Max stood beside a wall panel and scratched hard at the baseboard. Evelyn pried it open. Inside, a list of names, dozens of them, handwritten. Girls' names, ages, some crossed out, others circled. And next to Maya Patterson's name, a date, July 19th, tomorrow. The team worked through the night. Evelyn didn't go home. Max stayed curled beneath her desk, only rising when she did. Every time someone came through the door, he sat up, ears perked, like he was ready to go. By 6 o'clock a.m., they had 2 leads. One, the equipment in the bunker had been ordered online, via a burner account tied to a P.O. box registered under the name Francine A. Bellamy. 2, the P.O. box was located at the Willow Creek Historical Museum, which just so happened to be run by Frank Hollowell, the town historian, the man who'd dedicated his life to preserving the story of the women in white. The museum looked innocent enough, red brick, American flag, dusty old clock out front. But when Evelyn and Max entered, Max growled instantly. Frank, behind the counter in a vintage Civil War vest, smiled when he saw them. "Sheriff," he said warmly. "And Max. Haven't seen him in a while." Evelyn didn't smile. "We need to talk." "Of course. What about?" She placed the list of names on the counter. "Recognize this?" Frank paled just slightly. "Just enough." "That looks old. Where did you find that?" "In a soundproof bunker under the oak tree," she replied. "You know, the one you've been telling stories about for 20 years. He looked at Max, then back at her. "You think I think you know more than you've told anyone," Evelyn cut in. "I think you've used folklore to cover for people doing real harm." Frank laughed, shaky. "You're talking about legends, Evelyn. You're letting fairy tales get to you." Max barked loud and sharp. Frank flinched. Evelyn leaned in. "Funny thing about legends. Sometimes they start with truth." By afternoon, they had a warrant. Frank Hollowell's house was a maze of dusty books, folk art, and regional maps. But beneath the surface was something else. Recordings, photos, and a full replica model of the Whispering Woods with tiny pins marking each girl's last location. Max led them to a locked closet. Inside, a shrine, not to a person but to an idea. Drawings of robed women, pages from old spiritualist texts. A photo of Frank, younger, beside a woman Evelyn recognized from the P.O. Box ID. Francine Bellamy, his sister. She'd disappeared in 1971, but clearly she hadn't vanished. She'd joined them. At 9:22 p.m., a breakthrough. A ping from the soundboard tracking app led them to an abandoned radio tower 2 miles outside town. State police rushed there with dogs and floodlights. Inside, they found a cot, food supplies, and a box of labeled syringes. Max sniffed and whined once. In the corner, a chain bolted to the floor. Empty. They'd moved her, but not far. The air was warm. Evelyn looked at Max. "Can you find her?" He barked once and took off into the trees. They followed Max down a steep slope, across a dried creek bed, and into a stretch of forest Evelyn had never entered before. It was darker here, the canopy so thick the moon barely broke through. Then Max stopped. In a clearing ahead stood a stone circle, ancient, covered in moss, with candles placed at precise points. And in the center, Maya. She was sitting dazed, her hands bound gently with silk, her dress white and flowing like something out of a nightmare pageant. Evelyn rushed forward, tearing off the restraints. "Maya, Maya, you're okay. We're here." The girl blinked. "They were singing," she whispered, "all around me. But I couldn't see them." Max sniffed her hands and licked her face once, then stood guard as deputies fanned out to secure the scene. Back at the station, Maya's story came out in pieces. She'd been drugged with something that made her feel sleepy, dreamy, weightless. They'd dressed her, told her the veil had chosen her to be part of something greater. "They said the world outside didn't deserve me," she said quietly. "They said the sisters were waiting, that they would make me better." Evelyn's jaw clenched. "Did you see them?" "Only one," Maya replied. "A woman, short gray hair, long white dress. She smelled like sage. She told me if I ran, I'd hear screaming forever." Maya started to cry. Evelyn placed a warm hand on hers. "You're safe now." And then she looked down at Max. "Because he found you." That night, Evelyn returned to Whispering Woods. Max followed silently. At the base of the oak, she found something new. A white slipper. Clean, dry, still warm. No girl missing. Yet. She picked it up slowly, then looked at Max. "We're not done," she said. He wagged his tail once, then looked to the trees, and growled. Sheriff Evelyn Grant stared at the white slipper in her hand, turning it over slowly like it might whisper something if she held it long enough. It hadn't been there the night before. That she was sure of. No footprints, no scent trail, no tire marks. Just a single satin shoe, still warm to the touch, sitting at the base of the tree like some kind of offering. Max stood a few feet away, nose to the wind, tail stiff. He didn't bark, he didn't whine, but his eyes stayed locked on the woods, like he was waiting for something to move. And Evelyn had learned to trust that silence more than any scream. They brought the shoe back to the station and tested it for prints. Nothing. It hadn't come from Maya. It didn't match her size, and no girl had been reported missing yet. That's what kept Evelyn up that night. The pattern had been broken. For weeks, every girl taken had been tracked to her birthday. 16 candles, 16 steps into the dark. Now, they were jumping ahead, moving faster, getting bold. She sat at her desk well past midnight, papers scattered around her, phone off the hook, as Max slept at her feet with one eye open. Evelyn didn't believe in curses, not in magic trees or ghost brides humming lullabies in the night, but she did believe in patterns. And someone had just shifted theirs. By morning, she had a list. 8 girls in 3 neighboring counties, all between 15 and 17. All had reported some form of stalking in the last year. Notes left on lockers, strange humming outside bedroom windows, objects moved or missing. Every report had been dismissed as teen paranoia or pranks. Evelyn wasn't dismissing anything anymore. She picked up the phone and called Detective Lamont from the state task force. "I need you in Willow Creek," she said. "Today. You get a new girl missing?" No, Evelyn said, but someone just left a slipper like they're sending invitations. Lamont arrived 3 hours later in a black Dodge Charger that didn't belong on back roads. He stepped into the station with his usual coffee and attitude. "You look like hell," he told Evelyn. She grunted. "That's because I live in it now." He dropped his bag and leaned over the map she had pinned to the wall. "Walk me through it again." She pointed at the oak tree, the center of every event, the circle, the sound equipment. "All of it ties back here." "Okay, now look here," she added, tracing a finger across a faint trail that connected to the old radio tower. Max found something else. Another path. One that runs under the bluff. "I think there's more down there." "More what?" "Rooms, people. History." He frowned. "You're saying this isn't just about folklore anymore?" "It never was," Evelyn said. "It's about control. Someone's been using fear and superstition as a smokescreen." "And what's behind the smoke?" Evelyn met his eyes. "A system." The trail was overgrown and almost completely hidden by brush. Max led them in with his usual efficiency, nose low, tail twitching. After 20 minutes, they found the tunnel entrance, just like Evelyn suspected. Half buried in stone and ivy, it looked like a collapsed root cellar, the kind settlers used a century ago. But inside it was anything but primitive. They descended 20 feet before the tunnel widened into a stone corridor lit by dim solar lamps, installed recently. The air was cooler, damp. Max stayed close to Evelyn's side but didn't bark. "Whoever built this," Lamont muttered, scanning the stone walls, "had money." They moved deeper. At the end of the corridor was a reinforced metal door. Evelyn tried the handle. Locked. Lamont stepped forward, produced a toolkit, and started working. "Got a warrant?" "I've got a missing girl and a shoe on sacred ground," she said. "That's my warrant." Click. The door creaked open. What they saw inside stopped both of them cold. It was a room, but not just any room. It was an underground ritual chamber, except built with precision and modern tech. Circular in shape, about 30 feet wide, with mirrored walls, a projector in the center, and 6 high-backed chairs arranged like a throne room. In the middle was a raised platform with straps and a padded seat. It looked part theater, part hospital, part nightmare. Evelyn walked slowly toward the control board on the wall. Lamont lifted a file from the desk nearby. "Names, dates, symbols. This is programming," he said quietly. "They're brainwashing them." Max growled. Evelyn turned. A figure stood at the doorway. A woman, late 60s, gray hair, dressed in white. And calm, almost too calm. "You're not supposed to be here," she said softly. "And you're not supposed to be kidnapping kids," Evelyn replied, hand resting on her hip where her sidearm waited. The woman didn't flinch. "We don't take them. We welcome them. You drug them. You dress them like brides. You put them in chairs and whisper nonsense into their ears until they forget who they are." The woman stepped into the room. "They come from broken places. Their homes are chaos. Their lives overlooked. Here they are seen." Max lunged forward suddenly, barking so loudly the woman stumbled back. Evelyn pulled him tight. "You're coming with us," she said. "No," the woman said simply. "You won't find them now. Not until we call them back. And when we do," she smiled, "they won't want to leave." Lamont moved quickly, cuffing her. They brought her out of the tunnel under heavy guard. But she never spoke again. Not about the organization, not about the other members, not about what they planned next. That night, Evelyn stood in the underground room alone. She turned on the projector. A soft humming filled the space. Voices, female voices, whispers layered beneath tone, words she couldn't quite make out. Max stood beside her, tail still. Suddenly, the humming stopped, and a different recording began. Not a voice, a video of a young girl, blonde, wide-eyed, crying softly. Maya. The clip was time-stamped from 3 nights before they found her. In the background, Evelyn could see the same 6 chairs, the same platform, and someone walking behind her. Another girl, still in white, face partially hidden. Not Maya. Not Emma. Not any girl on the missing list. She was new. Evelyn hit pause. The screen froze on the girl's face just before she turned to the camera. Brown eyes. Freckles? Braces. No one had reported her missing. Not yet. But she was already here. Already dressed. Already part of the next chapter. Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat in her office. Max curled at her feet. The list of names on the board glowing faintly under the lamplight. She added a new line. Unidentified girl. Underground recording. Max let out a low breath. They weren't hunting ghosts anymore. They were chasing a network. And it was far from over. The footage looped on the office monitor for the 6th time. Each time, Evelyn tried to spot something. Anything. That might tell her where the girl in the white dress had come from. She paused again on the same frame. The girl's profile, partially turned, her lips moving as if she were whispering. But there was no sound. No timestamp overlay. Just silence and flicker. Max sat beside her chair, watching with the same stillness he had in the field. His head tilted slightly, ears alert. "Yeah, boy," Evelyn murmured. "I feel it too." Something was wrong, not just with what they were seeing, but with how close it all was. Detective Lamont stood by the corkboard where every lead, name, and location had been pinned. "This girl doesn't match any missing persons report in-state," he said. "We're widening the net. But if she hasn't been reported, she could be a runaway. Or she could have been born inside this." "You mean raised in it," Evelyn corrected. He nodded grimly. "That would make her a second generation. Born into the lie." The thought made Evelyn sick. "What if she's not a victim?" she said quietly. "What if she's the recruiter?" Lamont didn't answer right away. Then, "You think the tree's just a prop?" Evelyn turned to look at the large aerial map on the wall. "No," she said. "I think it's the anchor." They returned to the woods that afternoon, this time with ground-penetrating radar. The state had sent in a team, quietly, to avoid attracting attention. Willow Creek didn't need a media circus, not yet. And certainly not before they figured out how many girls had been moved through this system without anyone noticing. Evelyn walked ahead with Max, retracing the exact path he'd taken weeks earlier. The path to the first slipper. The bunker. The stone circle. Now the air felt different. Still warm, still dense, but charged, like something was waiting just under the surface. Max's body tensed. His nose snapped upward, then to the left, toward the oak. He barked once. Evelyn followed. At the base of the tree, just where the roots twisted like coiled veins in the earth, Max began to dig. The technicians rushed in with equipment, and within minutes, the radar lit up like a Christmas tree. Hollow space, beneath the roots. "Whatever's down there," one tech said, "isn't natural, and it's big." They started excavation. Evelyn stepped back, shielding her eyes from the sun as Max sat beside her, panting, eyes fixed on the roots. When the first slab of earth was removed, the stench hit them like a wave. Old damp, rotting wood, and something sweeter, decay laced with perfume. "What the hell is that?" Lamont asked. They lowered a camera through the opening. The feed came up on the portable monitor, and no one said a word. Because what they saw wasn't just a room, it was a cathedral. 40 feet below the tree, encased in stone and earth, was a circular chamber lit by phosphorescent paint on the walls and candles still burning. Symbols were carved into every surface. Wooden benches lined the walls like pews. And in the center, atop a low platform, stood a carved statue of a woman in white, arms outstretched, face featureless, robe flowing around her like water frozen in stone. At her feet lay offerings, dolls, lockets, pieces of clothing, shoes. Max whined. "I've seen this symbol before," Lamont said, pointing at the carvings. "It's on the list we pulled from Hollowell's house." Evelyn didn't speak. She was staring at something just off to the right of the statue. A photo frame, rusted, nearly covered in moss. Inside it was a black and white picture. A girl, blonde, laughing. And standing beside her, Francine Bellamy, alive, much younger. And behind them, in the background, the oak tree, decades ago. Before the tunnel, before the cult. The tree was already the center, already watching. They lowered Evelyn and Lamont on a pulley, Max remaining above with the techs. Evelyn wasn't sure if dogs could get claustrophobic, but she wasn't about to risk Max's nerves this deep in the earth. Inside the chamber, the air felt thick, alive. The candles flickered in wind that didn't exist. Evelyn walked slowly around the perimeter, scanning every carving, every object. She picked up a small mirror, cracked down the center. On the back, the initials E.B. "Elizabeth Bellamy," she whispered. "She started it," Lamont muttered. Evelyn turned to him. "No, she revived it." She pointed to the statue. There was something here long before her, something that made people believe. He looked around. "Then what are we dealing with? A religion?" Evelyn nodded once. "A cult built around grief and control. They don't recruit just anyone. They go after the fragile, the wounded, the girls who want to disappear." Lamont glanced at the candle wax on the floor. Some of them never came back. Back at the station, they logged every item found in the underground cathedral. Evelyn stared at the log sheet. 83 objects catalogued. Of those, 21 matched missing girls from the tri-state area. Some hadn't been reported in over a decade. One name jumped out. Jenny Holt, age 16, disappeared in 2012. Foster care. No one had looked for her after the first month. She'd been forgotten, except by whoever had brought her here. Max laid his head on Evelyn's lap as she stared at the log. She rubbed his ears, trying to steady herself. "They're keeping trophies, boy," she whispered. "They're not just hiding the girls. They're building a history." That night, Evelyn received a voicemail. Blocked number. She pressed play. First silence, then humming, then a voice. Female, mid-20s, calm. "You're close, Sheriff, but you've only seen one side of the tree. When you're ready to hear the rest, come alone. Bring the dog. We'll know if you bring anyone else." Click. Max lifted his head immediately. His ears turned toward the phone. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I figured you'd want to come." At 2 a.m., Evelyn drove alone to Whispering Woods. Max rode up front, harnessed and alert. The moon was low, casting long shadows between the trees. When they reached the base of the oak, the leaves didn't rustle, the wind didn't blow. But Max didn't growl. He walked calmly to the tree and sat, waiting. Then Evelyn saw her. A figure stepped out from the trees. Young, pale, dressed in jeans and a hoodie. Not a ghost, not a robed acolyte. Just a girl. The girl from the video. Unidentified. Now standing 10 feet from the sheriff of Willow Creek. "You're her," Evelyn said. The girl nodded. "My name's Lily." Evelyn swallowed. "Were you taken?" "I was born here," Lily replied. "But I'm not part of them anymore." Max sat between them, watching both. "Why contact me?" Evelyn asked. "Because the others are still down there," Lily said. "The ones who didn't run. They think they're safe, but someone new has taken control." Evelyn frowned. "Who?" Lily looked past her, up at the oak. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." Lily stepped forward and placed something in Evelyn's hand. A necklace. A tiny pendant shaped like a key. "She built something deeper," Lily whispered. "Under the stone, under the root, under everything." And then she was gone. Slipped back into the trees before Evelyn could say another word. Max didn't follow. He just watched her go. Back at the cruiser, Evelyn stared at the necklace. The pendant glinted in the moonlight. She held it to the light and noticed something carved into the back. Property of E.B. Elizabeth Bellamy. It wasn't over, not even close. And somewhere under that ancient tree, final layer waited, buried, locked, waiting to be opened. The key was old, too old, carved in a style Evelyn hadn't seen before. The pendant was no larger than a nickel, yet the teeth at the end were oddly shaped, almost ceremonial. Not something made to open a front door, but something meant to unlock meaning. Property of E.B., the inscription read. Elizabeth Bellamy. She'd started all of this, or maybe, Evelyn thought, she'd been the first to surrender. The question now wasn't if there was something deeper beneath the tree. It was how much longer it would wait to be found. Max stood at the window of the sheriff's office, watching the woods in the distance. Even from here, the old oak's silhouette cut against the skyline like a scar on the land. Evelyn turned the key over in her fingers again. "You ready to go back?" she asked. Max's tail thumped once. By noon, they were back at the base of Whispering Woods with a full excavation crew from the state. But Evelyn kept them at a distance. This wasn't going to be an operation. This was going to be personal. She walked alone to the tree, Max padding beside her, silent but alert. At the base, where the roots twisted like old bones in the earth, Lily's footprints had already faded. But the memory of her voice, of the warning, stayed sharp in Evelyn's mind. Under the stone, under the root, under everything. Evelyn knelt and pressed her hand against the bark. It was warm, too warm. Like the tree wasn't just alive, it was listening. With the crews standing by, Evelyn used the key on the last locked hatch beneath the original underground chamber. It fit the hidden slot in the back wall perfectly. With a slow click, a panel of stone rotated inward. The smell that escaped was different from the others. Less decay, more earth. Old, untouched soil. The air was damp and cool, almost peaceful. Max stepped in first, unprompted, as if something told him this was his job now. They descended into silence. The chamber was smaller than the one above, but what it lacked in size, it made up for in intensity. In the center of the room stood a massive root system, encased in glass, preserved like a relic. Glowing inscriptions lined the walls, not painted but etched with light itself, symbols pulsing gently like a heartbeat. And in front of the root, atop a raised stone table, was a book. Bound in cracked leather, no title, just a symbol burned into the cover, a circle of 7 interlocking branches. Evelyn approached, Max close at her side. She opened the book. Inside, names, hundreds of them, written in different handwriting, different inks, different eras. Each name followed by a date, and nearly all of them 16 years old. Evelyn ran her fingers along the names until she found familiar ones. Margaret Bellamy, 1847. Catherine Bellamy, 1850. Josephine Bellamy, 1852. Then a gap. Then another cluster of names, girls she'd seen in missing persons reports from the last 30 years. All here, all documented. "This isn't a ledger," she whispered. "It's a recording of sacrifices." Max whined. At the back of the book was a loose page, newer than the rest. Typed. She pulled it free and read, "The tree is not evil. It is memory. It holds what we cannot. It whispers so we don't forget. Some of us are chosen to carry the burden. Some are called to return. When the final name is entered, the root will close. The circle will end. And the ground will rest." Below that was a blank line. The final name, unwritten, unclaimed, unchosen. Back above ground, Evelyn sat beneath the oak with Max curled beside her. The team wanted answers. She had too many. Lamont walked up quietly and handed her a bottle of water. "You look like you aged 10 years down there." "I did," she said. He sat beside her, their boots crunching soft in the pine needles. "So what now?" Evelyn looked out at the woods, silent but never still. "They've been doing this for nearly 2 centuries, she said. "Recruiting, disappearing girls who slipped through the cracks, and nobody noticed." "Sure," Lamont said. "Maybe they wanted to forget." Max raised his head suddenly, ears alert. From the woods, movement. They stood together, watching as a figure stepped into the clearing. Lily. She wore different clothes now, jeans, a hoodie, sneakers. She looked younger under daylight, more real. But her eyes were still too old for her face. "I want to help," she said. Evelyn nodded. "You already have." "No," Lily said. "I mean really help. There are others. Girls still inside. They won't listen to outsiders, but they'll listen to me. You think you can get them out? I know I can. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Lamont. He nodded. Let her try. Evelyn turned back. You have one shot. If it goes sideways... I understand, Lily said. I grew up in this, but I never believed it. Not really. Not until I met you. Evelyn studied her for a long moment. Then go, she said, and come back with whoever will follow. Lily disappeared into the trees again, this time with purpose. 2 days later, Evelyn sat in the Whispering Woods again. This time with Max, Lamont, 2 unmarked cars, and 5 agents from the FBI. It was time. The underground tunnels were sealed. The sound equipment dismantled. The cult members who remained had been arrested or scattered. But the trauma ran deeper than handcuffs. And then, just after sunset, they came. 7 girls, walking slowly through the woods. Some barefoot, some in white, all silent. And at their head, Lily, holding a candle that flickered but never went out. Evelyn stepped forward. No words, just a nod. The girls passed her one by one, and when the last had gone, Lily stopped. I left the book open, she said. I know, Evelyn said. I left the last line blank. Evelyn nodded. You're not the last. This ends here. Lily reached down and scratched Max's head gently. Thank you, she whispered. Then she was gone. Weeks passed. News outlets broke the story wide open. National attention. Documentaries, podcasts, protests. Whispering Woods became a protected site surrounded by fencing and cameras. But no one touched the tree. No one dared. Evelyn stood one last time at its base, Max by her side. She placed the key and the book into a sealed evidence box. Not everything should be understood, she said aloud. Some things just need to rest. Max barked once. She smiled, then turned her back on the oak and walked away. Thank you so much for following this story to the end. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you think the tree was simply a symbol manipulated by people? Or was there truly something ancient and aware beneath it all? Let us know what you believe. Because some mysteries are never really solved. They're just waiting to be witnessed. Until next time, stay curious and never ignore what your dog is trying to tell you.